Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Troy Mares. I am pumped to have you here. Today we're going to do a bit of a unboxing and first impressions of the Hollyland Mars M1 Transceiver monitor. Let's get into it. Before we open up the box, a little bit of an overview of the Hollyland Mars M1 Transceiver monitor, right? Transceiver, that's the key word here, the word that got my attention and ultimately why it's sitting here in my studio. Transceiver, it means this has a built-in transmitter and receiver, so it can send or receive a wireless video feed. Hollyland has a couple different ways that you can go ahead and purchase one of these. You can buy them in a pack of two, or you can buy them a standalone. I bought a standalone one here that I'm going to be using as my primary on-camera monitor and transmitter. The day will probably come that I buy a second one to be a dedicated client monitor or for first AC, but that day's not today. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get this monitor opened up. I love when a box lid just slides. It's like it's a nice little hug. So the first thing you're gonna see when you open this up is a tempered glass screen protector. That's always kind of a nice addition. Truthfully, I don't find myself using these that often just because I can never get them put on the right way. There's always bubbles and that drives me nuts. Underneath the screen protector, you're gonna see the actual monitor itself with a nice little foam cutout. For the antennas, Hollyland lays claim to 450 feet of line of sight transmission. That's roughly 150 meters if you're not in the US, which is gonna be plenty for what I needed to do. So looking forward to that, and we'll put that to the test kind of in a real world scenario later on in the video. 5.5-inch touchscreen monitor. I did listen to an interview with Hollyland and they were talking about how they tested a bunch of different monitors from third-party manufacturers and they weren't thrilled with the quality of it, so they actually made this one in-house. And in kind of my testing so far, it shows. The monitor is great, so we'll get into that. This 5.5-inch monitor is gonna have a max output of 1,000 nits, which I find is gonna be just enough to be usable out in daylight conditions if you're shooting outside. You're also gonna find in the box a user's manual, as well as a warranty card. And then one other piece that's useful is a USB-C to USB-A adapter. You're gonna use these for firmware updates as well as loading in your own custom LUTs. And that's everything in the box. So let's get rid of some of this stuff and focus in on the monitor. So the first thing I noticed when I picked this monitor up out of the box was this dense rubberized housing that encases the monitor. It's texturized, it's got a little bit of give to it, which I'm sure provides a little bit of shock absorption. So I would imagine this would withstand a drop better than a lot of monitors out there would. On the front, obviously you've got the 5.5-inch display. I think 5.5 inches is a great size for an on-camera monitor. 7 inches gets to be a little bit large in my opinion, and it definitely beats the built-in monitor on the camera. Flipping over to the back of the monitor, this is where you're gonna find some plastic on it. It feels to be a quality plastic though. It doesn't feel like something cheap and it doesn't creak or make noises like plastic does sometimes. So that doesn't seem to be an issue. Starting from the top left, you're gonna find the only button on this monitor, and that is the power button. You can long press it to turn it on or off, and you can short press it to lock and unlock the screen. Moving over, you're gonna find an 8.4 volt DC out port, as well as a 7 to 16 volt DC in port, so you can power this off of, say, a D-tap battery. And then you'll notice to the right of the NPF plate is the coveted SDI in port. That is such a welcome relief on this monitor, especially at this price point of $550 US. I think that's great. Love having that from a versatility perspective, and SDI connections, I think, are much better and more reliable than the HDMI counterparts. Which brings us to the left side of the monitor, where you're gonna find HDMI in and HDMI out ports. As far as I understand, this does support cross conversion, so you could put SDI in and convert to HDMI out. Moving to the top of the monitor, you're gonna find 2 antenna ports, and in those antenna ports are Hollyland's own antennas. I think these are going to be great. I love the size of these. They're very compact. On Hollyland's website, they market these as no disassembly required antennas or something of that nature, which is a very real problem that they are solving with this. If you're familiar with transmitters, they often have 3 to 4 inch, minimum 3 to 4 inch antennas that stick out of the top. And to pack it away, you have to unscrew those, store them separately. or risk breaking them because they stick up so high. These being as compact as they are, I've had no problem storing this in my bag with the antennas attached. I mean, even this way, it's shorter than my C70 is, so I've got plenty of room in the bag to store it with the antennas attached. That's a big priority of mine, is efficiency. The speed with which I can get set up and torn down and how intensive that is carries a lot of weight in my decision-making process in what goes on my camera or what comes with me on a shoot. So love that aspect. If for some reason you didn't like these or they didn't perform the way you needed them to, you could just thread these out and put on your own antenna. Moving to the right side of the monitor, you're going to find a 1/4-20 mount with slots for RA locating pins, which is a great touch and a necessity in my opinion. Above that, you've got a 3.5mm headphone jack for monitoring audio, as well as a USB-C port for future firmware updates, as well as inputting your own custom LUTs. And moving to the bottom, you're going to find one more 1/4-20 mount with those same RA locating pins. So that's great to see there as well. All right, so that is the physical walk around of this monitor. So far, good impressions. I'm going to go grab a battery so that way we can boot this thing up and we'll check out the interface. All right, I have an NPF battery and an HDMI cable. We'll plug it into the C70 so we can see an actual image. That snaps in well, locks in nice and tight. And we're going to set this down here. I'm also going to run this into the camera. Now that we have the monitor booted up and you can see the screen, the first thing I want you guys to notice is just how good the colors look, right? I've used a lot of monitors in the past that come out of the box with a strong magenta tint or a really strong warm or cool shift. And that's tough because you're monitoring your image and you're not really sure what colors you're getting. Now, Hollyland claims that out of the box it comes with a Kalman color calibration and it covers the whole Rec 709 spectrum. Plus 1 and 2 points for Hollyland on that front. The touchscreen is nice and responsive. One tap brings you into your homepage. On the top of the screen, you're going to have your info bar. Top left has your transmitter and channel that you're on, as well as the signal strength. Top center of the screen has your signal information as far as what's being input into the monitor. And top right is your battery information. Moving down to the bottom of the screen, you're going to have your toolbar. All right, working from left to right, you have a waveform. Waveform is what I find myself using the most when it comes to exposure. There's a lot of different exposure tools that you can use. This is my personal preference, so love to see that. The waveform can also be dragged around the screen, so you can move it wherever you like. Moving over is a vector scope, which is great for getting color balance. Again, that can be moved around the screen. Histogram. Moving on to zebras. The zebras are a little bit funny on this monitor. It just gives you one slider from 0 to 100 to adjust your zebra threshold. I'm assuming that roughly translates to an IRE value, but there's no real way to set left and right limits for your zebras or know exactly where you have it set. You can just kind of eyeball it. So I'd love to see that improved in a future firmware, being able to more specifically adjust your zebras. Focus peaking. Next tool you're going to see is false color. This is another great tool. This is the one that I should probably be using more than I do. I rely on my histogram for the most part. I think false color is a great tool. It also displays on the screen what the colors actually represent. And for some reason that's lacking on a lot of other monitor interfaces, so it's nice to see that. The next tool past the false color is a monocolor signal. So you can view your signal in black and white or red, green, or blue independently of each other. The next tool they provide is an aspect mat, which is useful. It provides some frame guides if you want to crop this image into a different format later on. You can crop for vertical. You could do something like a 2.39 aspect ratio if you're going for more of an anamorphic style look. The thing that I don't love about this is that you have to cycle through all of the aspects before you can get back to turning it off. So that is what it is. I will probably only use it truthfully for vertical content. That's the only thing I'm shooting besides 16:9, at least as of today. The next tool is the custom LUT tool. This allows you to import 5 LUTs via that USB-C port onto the side. They're all stored on the internal memory, It comes preloaded with a couple different LUTs for C-Log, C-Log2, and a couple S-Log LUTs. I've already imported 2 LUTs of my own. F1, I have a creative LUT that I built myself for C-Log2, as well as Canon's standard C-Log2 to Rec 709 conversion. So I have those on F1 and F2, use those frequently. Again, this is where the color rendition is just awesome. Even when I include a LUT into the signal, it was when I dropped in my own creative LUT is when I got pumped about this monitor because it looked so good as I was monitoring it. I was shooting stuff that I was inspired to be shooting because of how good it looked on screen, right? That's not something that you usually get on the smaller camera screen, or if your screen isn't calibrated well or the display isn't very good. But there's something about this display and the way that it renders the colors and uses the LUT looks good, and it inspires me as I shoot, and that's great. Being inspired and confident in your gear while you're shooting is everything. A couple more tools to run through. There's a color temperature shift, should you need to do that. I usually leave mine on 6500 Kelvin. That seems to match my on-camera LCD. Next tool is magnification. There's a 2x and 4x magnification, and then you can just drag with your finger all around the monitor to whatever you want to focus on. There is an anamorphic D-squeeze on here, a 1.33, a 1.5, and a 2.0. If you're shooting anamorphic, you can D-squeeze on your monitor, again, so that way you can actually view what it is you're capturing. The next button is kind of interesting. It's a pause button, and when you click on it, it becomes a play button. I don't know what that does. It seems to be like it would be a screen record option, but I haven't found anywhere that it records internally. So that might be put in there for future firmware uses. I don't know, but that's what's there. The next tool is a way to flip your monitor. You can flip it left to right, or you can flip it up and down depending on the orientation of the monitor. And the last one are frame guides, just a traditional rule of thirds composition that you can overlay onto your footage to monitor that way. The toolbar on the bottom of the screen seems to be a great way to access the tools that I need without having to actually swipe through different screens or go into an actual menu system and leave my monitor preview. So I like that, and I like that it fades away after, I think it's roughly 5 seconds. The toolbar will fade away if you don't interact with it. The last thing as far as an interface goes is the settings button, and this pulls up an actual menu. The first tab is the wireless settings. You can see there's 8 different channels to select from when you're transmitting. This monitor does intelligently pick the strongest signal available for you to use and will jump to that signal whenever it needs to. Moving down, you'll see function switch. This is how you switch this from being a transmitter to a receiver. Right now I have it set up as a transmitter, but if I were to press receiver, it would restart and now it would be ready to receive the signal rather than transmit the signal. So that's super easy. Pair is if you're pairing this with another Hollyland dedicated transmitter or receiver, and then fan control. Right now it's on auto, but you can also mute the fan control. Great to have if you need a super quiet environment, but just know that this fan is not loud. It's running right now, and you probably aren't going to hear the fan, and I'm wearing a lapel mic, so it's only 12 inches away from that fan. Not going to be an issue for anything that you're trying to capture from an audio perspective, but you can mute it if you need to. The next tab is for display settings. Here you can adjust the brightness of the monitor. I usually keep mine around 50 or 60. I don't often shoot outdoors at noon, but if I did, I would crank it up to 100. But to save a little bit of battery, I leave it down about 50. The next thing is you can toggle on or off UV display. I don't truthfully know what UV stands for. If somebody knows, drop that in the comments below. What it does is it displays your audio meters. That way you can visually reference your audio just to make sure nothing is clipping. Then you can change the language below that. And then the last tab is for your device info. You can see Wi-Fi name, password, serial number, as well as reset the device to the factory settings in that final tab. So as far as an on-camera monitor goes, it seems like it's going to be great. The other aspect of this, again, is being that transceiver. So the next thing that we're going to take a look at is how it actually transmits signal. And I've got an iPad here that I've already connected to the Wi-Fi. This creates its own Wi-Fi signal, and then I just joined that network via my iPad. So when we tap into the Hollyview app, again, it looks very similar to what we found on the actual monitor. On the top left, you have the volume indicator of the channels that you're monitoring. Top right, if you can dive into that menu, it shows you your Wi-Fi connection, the password, and which transmission channel that you're on. On the middle left of the screen, you have a lock and unlock button. On the middle right of the app, you can screenshot, you can screen record, and then you can also view any of those things that you've captured right there in the app. And then just like the monitor, On the bottom, you have your whole toolbar. You can tap in to, say, the waveform. You can move it around the screen, put it wherever you like, histogram as well. In the app, we can long press any one of these tools, and it'll pull up some secondary controls. You can adjust the intensity of it. You can move these all around the screen. The zebra function, you long press that. You do get the same threshold slider. This time it at least gives you a percentage as to where you're at on the slider, but I don't know exactly what that translates to as far as an I or E goes. But zebras are a little bit better too. Frame guides, and you can tap in and see a ton of different frame guides, color, transparency, center mark. Magnification, again, you can move that around the screen as well, just like you can on the app. False color is good, and it also provides the false color indicator. Monocolor is here. 3D LUT. 3D LUT is worth talking about because I don't particularly like the way that the LUTs look here. You can't import your own LUTs. It provides you with 5 different LUTs, C-Log and C-Log2, as well as S-Log, S-Log2, and S-Log3. So if you're shooting in one of those log formats, great, you're good to go. I happen to be shooting in C-Log2, so that's not a problem for me. If you weren't shooting in C-Log2, I'm not sure what the answer would be. I don't know if there's a way to work around that. Maybe Hollyland can provide some type of input on that in the future. Then the last tool you have is to flip the display. That's the Hollyview app, very similar to the on-monitor controls. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to test out what the latency is like and what the range is like. All right, so here's how this super scientific latency test is going to work. We have the C70 hooked up. Here is the actual on-camera monitor. This is the Hollyland Mars M1 attached via HDMI on top, so that's getting a direct feed. And we have a wireless signal going to my phone here in the Hollyview app. You can see them all side by side. We're going to do the coveted, the lovely clap test. We'll pause it in post and see just how many frames we're off when it comes to latency. All right, here we go. Hey, editing Troy jumping in real quick with a surprising finding in that during that latency test, I found about a 2-frame delay from the camera monitor to the actual app, that was my phone, but a 4-frame delay to the Hollyland Mars M1 monitor that was attached via the direct HDMI. All right, so here is again our unscientific range test. I got my cell phone up there. I'm gonna press start on a timer, and the Hollyland Mars M1 monitor is going to send that to my tablet. I'm going to carry that through my studio and head outside, see how far we can get. Press start here. Timer's going there. Timer's going here. So that is everything that I know about the Hollyland Mars M1 transmitter as of date. If you have any other questions that I didn't go over today, drop them in the comments below. I'll do my best to get those answers to you. The next thing that we need to do is actually get this rigged up on the monitor the way that I'm going to be using it for the foreseeable future. I'll do another review in 6 months and a year or so to give you kind of a longer term review of this monitor, but let's get this rigged up. We're actually going to do that in the next video. I'm going to put that on the screen here. So feel free to click on that. I'll also put the link down in the description below. I am new to the YouTube platform, so you probably haven't had a chance yet to subscribe to my channel. So now is your opportunity. Go down there, hit like, hit subscribe, do all the things. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.